Hello, people of the world, and welcome. You already know the show name by now. If you don't, figure it out. It's posted on the thing every single time. Um, I'm feeling snobby today, honestly, because it's probably because I've been, a little tipsy, but that's okay. That's okay. Today, I am going to announce I do have my brother in the studio, so I'm doing the podcast in front of him, and we're just hanging out. It was his birthday last week, so we're hanging out this weekend. Happy birthday, my dude. So today, I don't even know what we're going to talk about. I have a good topic for today. Guilt. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you the feelings of guilt that I have for doing things in the previous past or in relationships that I've had with people. The guilt that I felt was unreal. It used to hold me back a lot, feeling bad for other people, for things that I've done, and things that I can't really make up for. But today we're going to talk about how I overcame some of that guilt and how I made myself feel better about that stuff and accepted how I wanted to be more so in the future than I could be back then. So, today, we're going to talk about a little bit of the past first, and then we'll go into a little bit of the present, and then we're going to talk about the future. So, the past. First of all, I want to say that I have done some messed up things to people in the past because there was no process back then. When I was younger or a kid, I didn't really know how to process guilt or process certain emotions. So it was hard for me to feel guilty towards things. Um, in relationships, for instance, I dated a lot of people. Slept with? No. Every now and then, of course, we would have our relations, but I can say my body count's still pretty low. Just saying. It's under the double digits, okay? It's still in single digits. So I have standards. Um, Main thing that I can say is whenever somebody approaches me about something that I did in the past, let's say it was a fight, let's say it was an argument, let's say somebody feels that I did or said something to upset them in a way, is first, if it's in the past, I will apologize because that was not a good characteristic of me. People that know me now know that I can treat certain situations and certain levels of anger or aggression or resentment in certain ways. And I can be a forgiving person, but I can also be a progressive person. And what I mean by that is allowing people to feel what they feel and accepting that, but also looking past that, as in trying to see a resolve or see like a resolution towards that guilt that I would feel if I hurt somebody's feelings. I do take people's feelings into account, and I do think about that stuff, but I don't let it affect me personally. My feelings are what are important to me, just like your feelings should be important to you. Whenever somebody says that you should put yourself first, that can't be like more of the truth. Seriously, your feelings should come first when coming into something. Um, my first relationship that I can think of at an earliest age was definitely towards a desire to want to sleep with a person. But it wasn't enough to push me over the edge of hurting their emotions or hurting their feelings because it was such a young age, right? We both were in I think fourth or fifth grade. And this is such an adolescent time in my life that I didn't really think about the damage that I could have caused or would have caused towards this person by dating and dumping them. So when I'm usually in a relationship now, as the present, I will try to make it work. I will agree to certain terms and make it work. But back then, if something I didn't like happened, I cut it off immediately because I felt like, oh, I'm just going to hurt this person. And I'm just going to hurt myself by subsiding to what they wanted. So nowadays in the present, if there's something that I don't like about a person, I take that into consideration with their feelings as well. And I put my best foot forward when going into that. So when I was in the relationship with this person in such a young adolescent age, I was taking their feelings into consideration by taking my own action and not understanding how they would feel about it afterwards. I only thought about right then, right there, right now, as in the present. But in reality, I should have taken more of a stance of futuristic view. And it's hard for children or adolescent people like myself back then to think about the future. We don't think about the future when we're young. We're just like, go with the flow, living life, being present. And when you think that way, it's very great. It makes you feel good about what you're doing, and you're not really thinking about the future. I can't say that's good or bad. I really can't because when you're an adolescent person or you're younger, you should have somebody who your mother or your father or your grandmother or grandparent or aunt or uncle, somebody there who has been through it to try to tell you, or guide you into something that is better for yourself. That's that's the goal of raising a child, is to guide them to be better than you or put them in a situation that is better than the situation that you're in. You want them to succeed, right? So I never took into account the future of these relationships. I always just thought about the right now, what was happening right now. I never thought that this person would be affected by a little dating or like crush thing that happened at such a young age. And I'm sorry if that person does see this or um, has been affected in a certain way that affected their future relationships. I am deeply sorry about that. But I'm going to contain that guilt of that and say, well, it happened. I can't take it back. I want to feel guilty about it, but I don't know how it affected them today. I don't talk to that person anymore. I don't even know who they are or where they are or what they're doing or who they're with. And that's not my problem necessarily. I know it sounds like bitchy, but it's whatever. Like, I don't care where they're at because I care where I'm at emotionally. I don't harbor guilt towards that. So, in middle school, as an example, sixth grade through eighth grade was my middle school. And it was a weird time simply because we did have um, equality with gender statistics and sexuality, I would say. That's how you can classify it. There was equality between that, but I dated a person who identified as they them. And back then, it wasn't widely accepted. So this person didn't really know the containment of how to keep themselves. They weren't sure what they wanted to be as a gender. And it's hard when you don't have people to look up to see like a good example of what that means or what it can mean or who you get to be. Having examples of that wasn't available at that time. So they were just going with the flow. And I dated them and I got criticized a little bit for dating someone who was assigned female at birth but identified as male in certain situations. And it was more of a dominance factor, I would say, because I'm into dominant people. That's just how I am. I can't help it, you know. Um, Being able to have something taken out of my control has been so new to me recently that I didn't realize that's what I wanted back then. I wanted somebody to take the control out of my hands so I didn't have to be the leader in every single situation. Obviously, my zodiac, I'm a Leo, so I want to take action and I want to take control and be a leader in every situation that I can. But sometimes I want someone to take care of me. You know, I want someone to care for me so then I can be carefree in a way. And it's hard to find people like that because in the state that I'm in the place or area that I'm in, there's not a lot of that. Most people who are men have to be masculine and take care of themselves while taking care of somebody else. I don't agree with that. And a lot of people might combat me on that, but I don't care. It's not what I want in life. Sometimes I want somebody there who can take control. So it's very difficult to find someone of equal level or equal value who can see when you want to take control and when you don't want to take control and when you want to sit back and let somebody else take the driver's seat for a second. So when I found that in middle school, I didn't realize at the time that's what I wanted because I was always brought up and raised up to be the man. I was always raised up to be the one to take control. And now that I'm an adult, I'm realizing that I don't have to take control all the time. I don't have to. I don't have to be the guy that pays for everything. If I want to, I can. But if I don't want to, I don't have to, you know? Um, so this person was a very not controlling, but very dominant person, a very dominant forward thinker. And I really liked them. I liked their personality. I liked the way they held themselves, the confidence that they had. I wish that I would have had back then. As I've said before, believe it or not, with all the confidence that I have, I was actually bullied in elementary school and middle school because we moved around a lot. I didn't really have friends until my high school years because I stayed stationary in one school throughout high school. So I made friends. I made a group of friends that I had, and I love them dearly. Like, even to this day, there are a few friends that I still talk to. I tell them I love them and I hope they're doing well, and they're doing really good. But a lot of my friends from high school aren't my friends anymore because I realize that, you know, they're fake, but we'll get on that topic later. Um, my thing with this person in middle school was I really liked the fact that sometimes they would take control and I wouldn't have to feel bad or like guilty about not manning up and doing something. That felt amazing to me. And I do believe, if I remember correctly, this person broke up with me because of my ill forgotten confidence, as I would say, or my forgetfulness that I was confident or a confident person. So that's where that relationship ended. And I miss those kind of relationships, the ones that would allow me to be guilt free for letting someone take control and do things for me. That was actually, I think, like my third relationship ever was with someone who didn't have specified gender. They were non-conforming and non-binary, and I didn't realize what that meant back then. But now I do, and I realize, oh, that is something that I'm into. That is something that I really like. Someone who will say, "Wait, I got it," or "Wait, I'll pay for it," and I don't have to feel guilty about that. I can accept that. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. But the whole thing is I feel better now as an adult for being more guilt free in the fact that if somebody wants to fix my car or somebody wants to help me in some certain way, then I can accept that. I'm allowed to accept that. I don't have to think of myself as the manly guy who has to do everything, you know? Of course, I feel confident and self reliable when I can do things on my own, but I don't have to do it for other people. So, a good example of this is when I was in later middle school, I want to say eighth grade, I dated somebody and she was very nice. She was very intelligent. She was very kind, but she cheated on me. And I took it upon myself to feel guilty. And here's why. So when she cheated on me, I looked at the guy that she cheated on me with, and I was like, well, what does he have that I don't have? That's a big thing for me is trying to self improve myself to make myself equal to the thing that she desired. And I worked so freaking hard to be the person that she wanted me to be that I ignored every aspect of myself and I would put her first. Now, we were on and off for years. I really did like her. She had some sort of like boldness in her that made her very light giving and made me feel not guilty, I would say. But there was the guilty side of things. I felt bad because other people would criticize her about her looks or the way that she was or how she slept around. And I felt guilty and like that I was dating her because I really did like her and I let my friends and stuff like that badmouth her and talk bad about her. When in reality, what they were doing was warning me in a way, hey, she's not the safest person to be around. Now, if they would have worded it differently, then maybe I would have heeded those warnings. But back then, I just thought that they were talking crap. And like my friends were just bad mouthing her. And that's where my evolution of like when I get into a relationship, I stop talking to my friends and family because most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, my friends and my family would talk crap about the people that I dated, and I would feel guilty for dating them. So, if I would have known this back then, I would have been able to contain that guilt and thought about it more and processed what they were saying instead of how they were saying it. So, if they would have told me that she was sleeping around on me, I wouldn't have believed it because there's that guilt of dating someone that makes you feel bad about liking that person, even if they do bad things or make you look silly behind your back. I still would want to be with that person because of who they are, not because of the way they looked, not because of the things that they did. I would still want to be with that person, but I would feel very guilty about being with that person because of the way other people would talk about them. And that's another one of those things where I got to put myself first rather than what they're doing first because it doesn't matter. to me personally what they're doing or how they're feeling. It matters to them how they're feeling. Just like my feelings should matter the most to me. Remember, put yourself in first place. I talked about this in one of my other podcast episodes. I think it was lovely. Or a different one, I do believe. I talked about putting yourself in first place, making sure that you're good first before you start thinking about other people. And that's so important. It really is in self development wise. If you're trying to build up a relationship, obviously you're going to think of the other person as well, but you should always put yourself first and your needs first and not feel guilty about that because you're important. You're an important piece of your life. It's your life, not theirs. So if I wanted to be with that person who is cheating on me or whatever, I would have let that happen and made that happen. Even though it sounds silly, it sounds dumb, I would have let that happen if the guilt wouldn't have got to me. So there's a lot that goes into that with relationship wise. Now, when it evolved into high school years, like ninth grade through 12th grade, freshman to senior year of high school, I turned it around and my friend group became more of a jerk group. We became like the bullies in high school. We weren't, I guess my friend group wasn't really bullied in younger grades, but I was. Personally, I was. And they took it upon themselves to kind of harbor me and give me refuge from that bullying. So I felt in debt to them in a way. So in high school, I would do anything I could to make sure that my homies knew that I had their back. And it was kind of a I owe you kind of thing. And the ones that I know now, the ones that are with me now as my friends still, I call them my A1s from day ones. They've been there since the early stages of my development, but they've also helped me in ways that I could never imagine. And so I don't feel in debt to them at all. Actually, they show self reliance all the time and are better people than the people that I know who have left me behind and left me in the dust and made me feel guilty about doing things that were against what they would do. The A1s from day ones, they have been with me through thick and thin. They've seen it all, ups and downs, and they still come at me with positivity. Yeah, my best friends, the ones that have actually stuck through everything are the ones that I respect the most because I don't feel guilty. I don't feel like I owe them anything, and they shouldn't feel like they owe me anything either. So I appreciate them and I send them texts and let them know, hey, much love, spreading love, you know. I do that willingly because I should. They're my friends. Being comprehensive of guilt and feeling like you owe people stuff can hurt you in a lot of ways. And I don't feel that guilt towards my friends or the ones that have been with me this entire time and still stick by me to this day, even after coming out. Like most of my close friends, they're like, oh, we knew. And I'm like, whoops, you know, like how did I don't know how you knew that. I don't get how you knew that, but okay. Like I thought I was pretty manly, I guess. Like I stood up for my own equality. I stood up for other people. I was always the one to confront people. Um and now I'm like more laid back and I don't feel guilty about letting people take control of situations. I'm like, go ahead. I don't want to deal with it. I don't care. I have no more fucks to give. Um, actually, I have one. it's up on my it's up on my thing right over there. I got one little fuck to give, and I'm saving that for like a good occasion. Uh, So I never try to feel guilty about not caring because I have people in my past that have had incidences that make it so that I understand the guilt and I understand that I'm just taking care of myself first. I'm not looking at other people's stuff because that comes second. First, I always contemplate how I feel, or do I feel guilty, or do I feel right or wrong in a situation? It's how I feel. So, with that being said, guilt is a very strong thing. And you shouldn't feel guilty about the things in the past unless they're unforgivable, of course. There's a few things that are unforgivable in my mind, and that's like sexual assault, unforgivable. Murder, unforgivable, right? Um, and there's another thing I'm trying to think of it. Oh, harm to like animals and stuff. Like I don't know how you would put that. Cruelty to animals. Those are like my big three of like unforgivables. If you commit any of those, well, maybe you should not be around people. Just saying. Um, that's my big three. Anyway, create your own list. Keep it to yourself. Guilt is something that you can let build up over time as well, and it can be hard to let go. So, when I was in those relationships, as I previously explained, I never let that guilt follow me into future relationships. I always start sort of fresh when I get into a relationship with someone, or if I just start a friendship with someone, I try to start fresh and right off the bat. And I explain to them I don't care, as in, I care about me first, and then I care about you second. And that's not me downgrading anybody. That's not me looking down on anybody. It's just making sure that I feel comfortable first because, bitch, I'm allowed to feel comfortable. I shouldn't have to feel guilty about the ways that I act or the ways that I feel. You know, even if they have negative like applications to certain things, I shouldn't feel guilty about that stuff because I'm taking my feelings into consideration first. Like, if you feel guilty for what you did, okay, now you need to progress past that. But if you're feeling guilty about the way that you are, bitch, stop. You need to stop that. You need to consider yourself first. Your emotions are valid. I tell everybody this. Your emotions are valid. You are a person. You are allowed to feel things. You are allowed to go through things. You're totally allowed to do that. Processing that guilt is going to help you progress as a person. And that's what my podcast is mostly about, how I progress through things. And if you feel what I'm saying, awesome. If you don't, I don't really care because it's my opinion, not yours at the end of the day. It's my feelings, okay? And if you do feel me on this, awesome. You understand where I'm coming from, where you need to take yourself into consideration. You need to put yourself first on that pedestal because you matter to you. Nobody else is going to care. Is what I'm trying to get at. They're thinking about themselves, you should think about you. So heads up, through this podcast, my computer has been messing up and doing like weird things. I think I really need to get a new computer. But we'll talk about that in a minute because I have some other new things that I need to tell the peoples about. So, getting back on track to guilt. You shouldn't feel guilty about yourself and your feelings. If you feel guilty about something that you did, like I do sometimes, just understand and process that first before you progress. And if you do process it, then you're going to progress. You're going to go farther. It's going to put you in a place of comfortability that you've never seen before. Seriously. Um story about one of my brothers. My little brother, he got in trouble at school for throwing a hard candy. I can't say the name, but a hard candy at another kid. This kid was saying something off putting about one of his friends or like one of his classmates or something. And my little brother got upset and he threw this hard candy at the back of one of these kids' heads. They took him to court and he got an assault charge for throwing a piece of candy at another kid. You think he feels guilty about that? No. And he shouldn't feel guilty about that because it was so frivolous and so down. My little brother was thinking about himself and how he was feeling in that moment rather than what that other person was feeling. I'm not saying he's right or wrong because, violence is never the answer, but it was such a little incident. And you're going to drag him all the way through court and put him in jail, by the way, for an assault charge for something as frivolous as that. When there are people who are literally kicking down doors and robbing people who still get off with no sentence. Do you really think he should feel guilty about that? No, I don't think he should feel guilty about that. But on the other hand, one of my friends was driving down the road, and it's kind of a gory subject. So if you don't like this, skip ahead to the video through this story. But they were driving down the highway in their truck, and somebody had jumped out in front of their truck. They, I do believe they were suicidal at the time, and that's kind of a touchy subject. We'll get on that later. I'm not a therapist, so I can't really talk about that like subject too much. But this person jumped in front of the vehicle and they hit them with the vehicle, and their deceased body flew over the car and landed in the bed of the truck. And of course, he screeched to a stop. He called an ambulance right away. He called 911 and got an ambulance there right away. And the police started treating him as a criminal because of what just happened. In their eyes, he had just hit somebody. But in his eyes, somebody had jumped out in front of him while he was driving. To me personally, I don't think he should feel guilty about that, but he did feel guilty about that in ways that we couldn't even process or imagine, you know? And it took his guilt literally made him not want to drive anymore. I remember there was a whole like few months, almost a year, that he just would not drive. He refused to drive because of that. Why am I craving a donut? For real, I'm fucking craving a donut and I can't have it. No, I can't do that. I can't do that because that's part of budgeting is we'll get on budgeting later, but that's a part of budgeting is like not just going out and buying what you want just because you want it. And it's also a part of dieting. Back to the story at hand. So my friend felt seriously guilty about what had happened, and it traumatized them enough to where they didn't want to drive anymore. And I really wish that that person would feel less guilty towards something that they couldn't control. Because it was proven in court that the person was suicidal and did jump in front of his truck. That was the whole thing. And I believe in my last episode, I talked about how me and my cousin used to have this quote: they'll use their brakes. They've got brakes. They'll use them. That was the stupidest statement I ever heard. Seriously. Like, Oh my gosh, I now as an adult, I have seen it firsthand where breaks don't always work. I wish that they would have known that guilt is not something that you should feel so heavily in that situation, because that person who stepped out in front of his truck didn't think about the repercussions of the future, as in how my friend felt about it. They didn't think about that. They just thought they wanted to end it all, so it was easier to make it somebody else's problem. I have a very weird view on death and the way that it works. And I believe that taking your own life is obviously like the wrong thing to do, but it's also a very selfish thing to do because everybody around you that considers you a friend or family, doing something in those conditions is not how you want to think about things. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Again, we're going to do a whole episode on that, but for now, we're just talking about the guilt of that comes afterwards. Everybody that's surrounded at your funeral is going to feel like they could have done something more to help you in that situation. And that's like, honestly, that's not true because you're feeling how you're feeling. You're being very selfish and thinking about yourself in that moment. You don't think about how it's going to affect other people. And for my friend, it affected them greatly. It really did. And I felt terrible that my friend had to go through that. Not like I felt terrible that the person had, gone out that way. But at the same time, I'm thinking of more my friend was hurting from the action that was caused, and he felt very guilty about that. Like maybe he could have done something to stop that from happening. When that's simply not true. He couldn't have stopped that. We didn't even know this person. So how could he have prevented something so catastrophic from happening? And it affected him very greatly to the extent where he didn't even want to drive his car anymore. That right there is a perfect example of how guilt is stopping you from progressing. You want to progress in life, you want to do better. Don't let the guilt hold you back from that. Plain and simple. So, another subject that I want to talk about right now is the guilt of your parents. Okay? Because that's something that's very touch and go. It's kind of like it's a touchy subject. It really tips either way. Like if you had great parents who loved you the entire time and did everything they could to create the best life for you, then maybe their guilt and satisfaction from you feeling guilty should be acknowledged. I say this all the time. I love my mother. I do. She did everything she could as a single mother. She worked crazy amounts of hours to make sure that the household was upheld as a single mother. So I have a great respect for my mother. Just know that your parents should be the most guilty people in your life. They should feel the most guilty about spending money that they don't have or spending money on ways to treat you should be not seen as guilt. They don't feel guilty about that. Maybe they feel guilty for not allowing you to process your emotions and not allowing you to kind of do things on your own. So there's plenty of other reasons why a parent would feel guilt, but that's the main one that comes to mind when I talk about this subject. When I talk about this subject, I think about maybe my parents could have done differently. Maybe my grandparents could have handled things differently. Maybe my aunts and uncles could have helped me out instead of like leaving me behind in a way that was hard to follow. So those are people that should be feeling the most resentment towards their life choices and their guilt. in a good and bad way because they produced you as a person. So your feelings matter the most in this. So whenever I hear somebody talk about their kids in a negative way, my initial reaction is, well, you decided to have them. And that seems kind of like rude or off putting, but it's reality. You chose to have kids, and sometimes kids are unexpected. I get that. They call them happy accidents. Well, then make it happy. Don't guilt trip your kids into feeling guilty for being alive. So, like I said before, my mom and my dad tell me all the time that, yeah, they love me. I understand and I love them. I don't put it past what they had to do to get through what they did. But at the same time, I'm not going to feel guilty for the mistakes that they made or the mistakes that they didn't make. Right. So don't feel guilty that your parents feel bad about something. Feel responsible and pride in your parents for overcoming what they did to have you around or to create that thing that is now you. Your emotions matter most when it comes to the relationship with your parents. That's a big thing. That's a very big thing. And I feel like a lot of people let their parents' guilt or resentment in that get the better of them most of the time. It shouldn't, in all reality, it shouldn't. They chose to have you as a child. They chose that. There are plenty of people in this world who feel the same way. As in, well, I didn't choose to be born. Well, neither did I. And at the same time, I don't hold resentment towards my mother for having that. I just automatically assume that my mom is proud of me in certain ways. So don't form guilt around a mistake that you made because it's going to affect you emotionally and personally. You shouldn't have to feel bad for wanting your child to have a better life. You shouldn't feel bad for having a child in the first place because now your world is going to revolve around them and make sure that they're okay. If they're not okay, that's on you as a parent to try to resolve that. So, moving on from the layers of cake that is parents and family, let's talk more about yourself and how you can manage your guilt in healthy ways to progress towards something. Number one for me is don't linger on resentments in the past. Don't let yourself feel bad about the things that you felt. Not the things that you did, but the things that you felt. You are allowed to feel those feelings. You're allowed to be um, sumptuous in a way that allows you to be the best version of yourself. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Is if you're feeling guilty about something, process your emotions like first, and then factor in how other people feel about it. That's like good sound advice that I could give to anybody is make sure that you're processing your emotions and your thoughts first to progress forward in a way that's going to be healthy for you and for them or others. Another main point for the higher ups in your life, don't project guilt onto people who don't deserve it or don't project that type of instability to people that you don't actually care about because that's a lot of energy. Energy talk again. Learn to distribute your energy. Learn to love other people for who they are and not guilt them into loving you. Call it a guilt trip. Don't guilt trip people into thinking that they owe you something because you did something or felt a type of way and either did or did not react to that person. Plain and simple. Well, not plain, but simple. All right, that's where I'm going to end this podcast. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I got all my links down below. You know what to do. Go follow me on Instagram and TikTok because I need more followers over there. But if you like this discussion, leave a comment or leave something that you would like me to talk about next. So just remember, don't feel too guilty about things as long as you're processing them properly and moving forward and progressing in your own life because you matter. So, love you.